what opportunities, what adaptive and accessible ways and spaces that we can welcome those travelers and tourists to our destination. So in this hour, we're going to have a lovely conversation about what sensory inclusion means, how to welcome as many different people in that space as possible. My youngest daughter has ADHD, and we're discovering now how to be able to bring her more optimally into traveling and tourism. And there are some definitive ways to be able to navigate that. We have 3 sessions here over the next hour. This first session, we're talking to families with either neurodiversity in one way, shape, or form amongst their parents or children or a combination thereof. So let's just dive in, and if everyone could introduce themselves and then share a little bit about why you're here on stage.
Let's start on the far end because you guys know me.
Hi, I'm Lauren Badolato. I'm a TravelAbility fellow. I'm up here because I have 2 children who have disabilities, give or take. My youngest has a rare syndrome. He is autistic, has Dirk 1A syndrome. There's a lot of also that come with it. And then I have an 8-year-old with ADHD and ODD.
Hi, everyone. I'm Talia, Salem. You heard from me a minute ago, but I am a mom of a kid on the spectrum. She has autism, Turner syndrome, which is also a genetic disorder, and potentially ADHD, but she's still a little young for that. And then my husband is a veteran and has some PTSD and some other hearing challenges.
See if this works. Oh, it does. My name is Meg Raby Klinghoffer, and I actually am a self-advocate. I was diagnosed 2 years ago as an autistic female, and I work for Kulture City, which is the nation's leading nonprofit in sensory inclusion. So this topic is very near and dear to many facets of my life and many facets of our mission at Kulture City. So we're grateful to be here.
I'm Kristy Durso. You guys know who I am. But I am on the spectrum. My oldest is on the spectrum. My middle child, we joke that he's on the spectrum. He's got the hypermobility, and we couldn't survive without him doing like 20 hours of gymnastics a week. And then our youngest, we adopted out of foster care and has profound fetal alcohol syndrome and is cognitively and intellectually disabled. So my husband is also in the military, and he, before the military, did not have a neurodivergency, but he definitely has PTSD now because you can't spend that long in the military without it.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing to just bring up is that sensory considerations can affect anyone and everyone, whether neurodiverse or not. Myself, I was in New York City on 9/11, about 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center that morning, and definitely have some recurring issues from that. The first thing to dive in is really, is there a key takeaway or action item that everybody here could be able to immediately act on within their destination or attraction?
Anybody want to take this one? So, go ahead.
I definitely can. So at Kulture City, what we do is we champion sensory inclusion, and we believe that starts with gaining understanding about like what is sensory processing. So I think gaining that education, that training, and then supplementing that with the various tools that are available, and then through time and more education and partnership, we look into true cultural changes of sensory inclusion. So yeah, I would definitely say Kulture City would be an excellent partner to reach out to for that.
I love the work that Kulture City does and the other organizations like that. They are all fabulous, and you all should be investing in that because it provides the proper training for you. But for an easy, free thing that you can start now with training your destinations, your restaurateurs and your hoteliers, talk to them about allowing people who have sensory needs to call ahead of time. If the restaurant doesn't have a reservation system, talk to your businesses about putting on their website, if you have a neurodivergency, please contact us so that we can make sure that we set up a time for you to come in without a wait. There's no way, before we really started becoming advocates, we would not go to a restaurant where there was the possibility of sitting outside that restaurant and waiting, because our youngest would go, oh, we're gonna eat here, we're gonna eat here. Oh, did you know we're gonna eat here? We're gonna eat here, I'm gonna eat this. And by the time it's time to eat, we all just wanna go home. We're not gonna eat there. So one easy way that all they need to do is train. Yes, this family called, they have a neurodivergency, they want to come in at 11 o'clock on Sunday for our brunch because they've never experienced it. We're gonna allow that. We're gonna set a table aside. That's a reasonable ADA accommodation right there. It doesn't hurt their business, it's free for them to do, and they have now just allowed their business to expand into that world and allow families to come in and do that. And we can do the same thing with hotels. We call the hotel before we arrive. We let them know we plan on being there between 2 and 3. It usually ends up being 6, but we plan on being there and we'll keep you updated on our arrival time. Please allow us to skip the check-in line so that we don't end up having a meltdown in the lobby, and it's better for everybody. Nobody else has to experience the meltdown, and we get to go directly to our room where we can decompress. So those are so easy to do, and it's just a matter of addressing that in training and teaching your people to say, yes, we can make that accommodation for you. It is a reasonable ADA accommodation.
I just would want to say that sensory processing is a lot more complicated than we've been led to believe. Everyone kind of assumes you hear that stereotype of like, oh, the autistic kid with the hand over their ears and they can't handle the bright lights and they can't handle the loud noises. And that is definitely the case with a lot of kids. But that's not the case with every kid, and that's not the case with my family. My daughter is a sensory seeker. She has trouble sitting. She has trouble waiting in line. She likes loud noises. She likes big smells. She likes very intense things. And so people actually don't think that she is autistic and question me on a regular basis whether or not she is, like gaslighty. But I would say, like, we were at a restaurant recently at the Marriott Monterey, and I asked for a corner booth, and they were very accommodating. They did not make me feel bad that she got up, that she moved around, that she played with the lights. They just kind of let her be. It was really refreshing. And she just needed that sort of freedom of movement, which because she physically cannot handle sitting still, especially after a long car ride. So you have to imagine that it's sort of like a reserve. And so if you think about someone getting to a hotel, for example, they've already driven in the car, been on a flight, loud noises, different smells, crowds. So they're kind of like getting to the point of being overstimulated. It keeps building and building and building and building. By the time they get to your hotel, restaurant, or attraction, they've probably already exceeded their sensory capacity for a week. And then they have to behave and be in public and deal with all these strange people and strange food, which is a big thing for people with sensory sensitivities. And so I think just also giving people grace. Don't assume just because the person looks quote unquote neurotypical that they're probably losing their minds in the hotel lobby because they literally cannot help themselves. I've had a lot of hotel lobby meltdowns. I've also had a case where my daughter ran into the valet area, which was terrifying, even though I asked the front desk to keep an eye on her while signing the paperwork. So I just think teach your staff to be empathetic and also attentive. Like, what's going on with that family? Can you accommodate them? You don't know. Sensory challenges are very challenging. Actually, when Kristy presented a couple of years ago, she was talking about her kid being in the bathroom and the toilet flushing. So my daughter's a sensory seeker, but then she hates the flushing sound of the toilets and the echoing chamber of being in the bathroom. So you just never know what kind of sensory experiences kind of set your travel companions off. And to be accommodating of that, that's what I would say.
So just to jump on that, if you have automatic flushers at your hotel or restaurant, keep a pack of Post-it notes at your reception desk and hand them. If somebody discloses that they have a neurodivergency, ask if they need a Post-it note for the automatic flusher. And then they can put that over the automatic flusher. It delays the flush, and then when they're leaving and it's not going to trigger a response, they can take it off, and then the toilet flushes. Easy, cheap solution to that one. So,
on that note as well, the air dryers. When they're drying their hands in the bathroom, I avoid it at all costs, but you can't help it if you're in a theme park or with other locations and people put it on. My son freaks out and he self-harms. So when he uses his wheelchair, he severely starts bashing his head nonstop. The whole thing is shaking. And there's no way to kind of stop it because he's just overstimulated and it's too much for him. And it's not all noises because my son loves noises. It's actually one of his favorite things to do, but it has to be a specific thing, and it's more of like that shock. One thing that I also wanted to add is going to hotels seems to be a thing where they have the recreation for children. Unfortunately, they do not allow you to drop off any special needs children. And it's not lack of medical. My son is more medical than just autistic. But when it comes to autistic, because they're not neurotypical, they will not allow it because they're not trained. So I don't know if maybe if they see a reservation with an autistic child, there is a third-party company or just trained staff members who are well, with, special needs kids and how to behaviors and accommodate, because us parents need a little bit of vacation break too, and it would be lovely for the kid only, why can't they enjoy on those recreational things as well? I think it needs to be inclusive.
Absolutely. Now, does Culture City provide that kind of training to the staff to be able to care for the kids?
That's a great question. So I would say our training definitely taps into that. We highlight mainly what is sensory processing, what are the 8 senses, because many of us know of 5, but there are actually 3 other ones that I happen to have differences with myself with the other 3. So we take that knowledge and then we apply it to like having a curiosity in general toward both kids and adults. So I would say the training would be applicable because it would put the staff into that position of like, Johnny is presenting maybe this way and he's not joining the other kids in this circle. I'm gonna keep kind of watching and seeing like, what can I do, to join him and to get him all the accommodations that he might need to have the same fun that these kids are also having, even if that fun looks different. So while we don't do like a tangible checklist of like, here's what you do, we definitely talk about that posture of curiosity and how that the brain could be working differently. And that communication in and of itself, like that's what behaviors are. So it's not just a behavior that Johnny is not listening, or that Johnny is not playing with the other kids. There's communication happening. So those types of messages happen.
That's the way that they express. That's the way we express. Like we don't always know how to express verbally. And I think that's really wise.
One last question, and this is for adults that identify as neurodiverse. Oftentimes we think of children and typically represent that in marketing and advertising about neurodiverse children. But when it comes to business travel and other travel, parents and others, whether it's leisure or business, may have a neurodiversity. I'd like to hear about some considerations in that space from adults who are neurodiverse.
Who wants to take
either one?
this?
I actually, because of the traumas that I have been through with my son and everything, I am diagnosed depressive and have anxiety, so I do take medications for it, and a lot of times it is hard as well, because after that day of traveling, you need a little bit of a break, and it's so hard when you just don't have, the proper training and education, and you're being stared at, and it's a lot. So trying to find a place to have, for us to be included as well, like I mentioned before, having a place to be able to know that I can trust and leave my son where he's safe and enjoying vacation or wherever, just traveling business as well. It's hard. I like to make sure that we have time and scheduled so we can, either a spa treatment or just something to take a walk, a breather, and, know that there's people who understand what we're going through, and just ask if they can help in any way, shape, or form.
Yes, and can I have you restate that question specifically pertaining to adults?
So adult travelers who identify as neurodiverse, a lot of the destinations here focus on business travel, so conferences like this, or it's leisure where adults are traveling either with or without kids that are neurodiverse. Are there any considerations that the destinations could think about that may be a bit different or the same when it comes to supporting adults and welcoming adults who are neurodiverse?
Yes, okay. So I absolutely love this question because I do think we tend to prioritize, and rightfully so, children. But Culture City, what I love about Culture City is we are all about the 1 in 4, including kids and adults. So absolutely the accommodations, the training that we go over is absolutely about adults as well. And I know most of our activations that we're doing, around the world, even we always are having adults kind of open up and share their own story, and they have this safe space to do so, where they're being seen often for the first time too. But yes, we have sensory bags that are available and everything inside of them. We call even everything inside of them is appropriate for adult usage as well. So we even do trainings on the language that we use. So fidgets, we call them either fidgets or fidget tools, not fidget toys, because, and I'm right now lacking mine because normally I would have one while up here. But I was trying to figure out ahead of time, like, how do I balance the microphone and a fidget? So that stayed in the purse. But yes, so, and there's ways to just label different things because information, again, is power. And if you have the signage up and the information available for that adult, that is a proactive measure totally of getting ahead of dysregulation. I'm a person that if I know ahead of time things could be loud, I can actually prep myself, and I don't actually need the noise canceling headphones or inner ear loops. But yes, so there are definite tangible things that you can do. There's communication strategies to do with adults, and then even sensory rooms. We design research-based sensory rooms, and we tell people all the time, like, these are not just for children, like these are adult sensory rooms. And I mean, every time I travel into, I know, Alabama, where our hub is in Birmingham, I always stop to decompress in the sensory room, and it's my little oasis, so yeah.
I agree. Having every conference should have a sensory room. Every conference should have a room where we can go and take a break. I don't know if it's because of my connective tissue disease or the fact that I am autistic. I don't know what it is, but when I'm in a loud room after a while, my ears physically hurt. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if everybody feels that, but they do. And I have to go give them a break, mm-hmm. and I will overload. I will either start to spin up and talk so fast that you can't understand me, or I'll do the opposite where I'll just start to shut down and I can't even think on the conversation. And having that separate area to go and take a breath and calm down is really, really critical. And then the other side of that, Sandals and Beaches Resorts, I do a lot of work with them. And I was talking with them a few months ago at a retreat, and as we were saying goodbye, I'm talking to the head of butler services, and she goes, and remember, sell more butler suites. And I said, I can't, because it was more accessible. Sorry, wrong story. That's more about physical accessibility. But their beaches resorts have the autism certification through IBCCS, yes. Another excellent program. The adult resorts don't, and I had that conversation with the same person. Like, why do we not have that at the adult resorts? Why is there not training provided for the adults-only resorts? Because autistic children turn into autistic adults. Now, we learn our coping mechanisms, and sometimes we're able to mask it really well so that we can function in society, and children haven't learned that, which is why there's such a focus on autistic children, and we forget that adults are autistic. But we still need those accommodations. And if we're having to do self-accommodations, we're missing a lot of things. So if we're talking about those sensory spaces, if we're talking about low lighting, if we're talking about in the conference, I've made a point of saying several times, move your conversations outside. Even if you're whispering your conversation, if somebody at your table is on the spectrum and you're having a side conversation that lasts more than a minute, please take it outside so that that person is not so distracted by that conversation that they can't focus. That's one of the reasons I've mentioned that every single session. In order for us to function well, we've got to be able to focus. And so move conversations outside, have those sensory rooms at things, and then train your staff. It's not just children who need the accommodations. Adults need those accommodations too. It doesn't make them weird, it makes them human. That's all.
I would just add one thing about communication for sure and predictability for us, and especially my husband. If things aren't happening kind of in the way that he's expected, he will lose his mind. Like, he's expecting the on-site pool to be open and it's closed for construction, but no one told us. That kind of messes up our trip. And it's little things like that where just being proactive and by the way, XYZ is happening. If he knows in advance, that's fine. But he also struggles with those accommodations, and a lot of times, he's not considered because we're the parents of a kid, but he needs those accommodations too, and loud noises. So I think just knowledge is power. Over communicate as much as you can tell people things. It's better to be overly communicative than leave things out.
Yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.